I remember that season as if it just ended yesterday, the dry harmattan dust calling through the narrow red parts of Umus, catching in our throats and settling on the zinc roofs. It was the kind of weather that made old men sit longer under the udala tree and young girls tie their wrappers tighter, shielding themselves from the wind. That was the year Chidinma began working full-time at Ikumus Market, and unknowingly, began weaving a story that would leave many of us breathless. You see, Chidinma was not born to wealth or luck. Her father, poor Ikena, had been a respected yam farmer before illness stole him in the middle of the rainy season, leaving Mama Neko with 3 children and debt hanging like wet clothes on a sagging line. Chidinma, the eldest, was barely 16 when she took over her mother's woven basket and began hawking vegetables and dried fish near the central stalls. Every Tuesday and Friday, before the first cock crowed, I'd watch from my compound as she walked down the slope with her tray balanced on her head, wrapper swaying at her hips, her eyes steady but tired. I was older, much older, and spent my mornings roasting groundnuts and minding my own stall near the pepper sellers. But from the start, I could tell Chidinma was different. She didn't speak much, but when she did, it was with a kind of quiet grace. Even the rough-tongued butchers stopped mocking her once they noticed how she carried herself. Many of us whispered about her resemblance to her late father, those sharp cheekbones, the eyes that always looked like they held back more than they revealed. One particular market day changed everything. It was a Tuesday, and the market was already buzzing by mid-morning. The traders argued loudly over the price of egusi, and children darted between stalls chasing sachets of sweet water. I was fanning my fire when I heard the raised voice of Motsi Okoro, the palm oil merchant from Umokoro village. He was one of the wealthier traders, fat with influence and always chewing cola as if it were part of his job. Girl, didn't I say you should sweep this stall before I arrive? He barked. I turned and saw Chidinma frozen near a heap of plantains. She had clearly just returned from delivering a jug of oil to a customer's basin. The broom lay beside the sack of Gary. I'm sorry, sir. Before she finished, his hand moved. He didn't slap her, no, but he threw the broom at her feet with such force that the handle broke in half. The crowd grew quiet. A few traders chuckled awkwardly, but many of us simply looked away. That's how it often was in Umus. Men like Motsi Okoro could treat you like a goat and no one would say anything unless it was their own daughter. But I saw the tear. Just one. It rolled down her cheek, slow and silent like the Njoba River after rain. She wiped it quickly, bent down, picked up the broken broom, and swept the stall in silence. That was the first time I saw Chidinma's tears. Later that day, as the sun began to slip behind the raffia palms, I noticed a young man watching her from the far end of the market. He was dressed plainly, brown kaftan, cracked sandals, but he had the kind of stillness you notice. I recognized him faintly. Obina, I think his name was. He was a mason from Omona, the next village east. He came sometimes to repair broken stalls and water drums. When I caught his eye, he nodded respectfully and asked, "Is that the girl who helps Motsi Okoro?" I said yes. He smiled quietly and thanked me. I didn't think much of it. But as the weeks passed, I saw him again. Sometimes by the corner where the Accra women fried their balls, sometimes pretending to fix a tap that had been leaking since before Biafra. And each time, his eyes followed Chidinma. She didn't notice, at least, not then. Her days were filled with sweeping, packing, shouting, and delivering. But Obine kept watching. Not in the way rude boys watched girls. His was different. Like someone watching a flame in the harmattan wind, hoping it didn't go out. That December, just before the village Iriji, New Yam Festival, something unexpected happened. Motsi Okoro collapsed in the middle of the market. Some said it was stroke, others said it was greed. He had eaten too much cow leg and ojiri soup the night before. Whatever it was, he was taken home on a wheelbarrow, groaning and clutching his chest. For the first time in over 10 years, his stall sat empty. I didn't expect Chidinma to return after that. But 3 days later, there she was, sweeping the stall, arranging tins of palm oil, measuring Gary. She wasn't doing it for money. People said Mama Neka had told her, "Let the people see your loyalty. God is watching." And so, she kept the store going, even when there was no pay, but not everyone appreciated it. One morning, Edeora, a friend of Chidinma who sold vegetables nearby, told me she overheard the wives of the other traders mocking her. "See that one," they hissed, acting like the market is her father's land. Is it love she's chasing or a dying man's land? We both knew what they meant. If Motsi Okoro died, someone would inherit that store. And in a place like Umius, inheritance could be twisted like cassava stems in dry soil. But Chidinma said nothing. She kept walking, head bowed, until one day, Obina walked right up to her store, in full view of everyone, and said words that turned the whole market on its head. It was the third Friday of January, just after the New Yam festival, when Obina did what none of us expected. I remember the market clearly that day, hot, noisy, and restless. The dust rose like a curse, and the sun beat down on the tin roofs like it wanted to melt them. I had just finished roasting the last batch of groundnuts when I saw him, Obina, walking tall and purposeful, wearing a clean sky blue kaftan. His beard was newly trimmed, and his eyes held that look of a man who had wrestled with his thoughts and found peace. He walked past the spice sellers, past the plantain heaps, and stopped right in front of Chidinma, who was busy arranging empty oil kegs. Everyone noticed. "Good morning, Chidinma," he said, loud enough for at least 5 stalls to hear. She looked up, startled. "Good morning," she replied, wiping her palms on her wrapper. "I have something to say," he continued, his voice firm but kind. "And I want the market to hear it." By this time, Edeora had stopped slicing okra. The Egusi woman froze mid-pound. Even the women arguing over periwinkle prices paused, listening. "I have watched you for many moons," Obina said, "and I have seen the kind of woman you are. You carry pain and dignity together, like a basket on your head. You never complain. You never chase people. You just work and pray." His voice shook slightly, but he didn't stop. "I am not rich. I am not the son of a chief. I lay blocks and build homes with my bare hands. But I came today to ask, will you allow me to start a journey with you? I don't offer silver, but I offer peace, respect, and honesty. I want to marry you, Chidinma." Ikumu's market has never been silent like it was that day. We all stared. Some mouths were open, others covered. I held my roasted groundnut so tight I crushed a handful. Never, never had anyone proposed in public like that, especially not to a market girl. Not to someone like Chidinma. She didn't speak for almost a full minute. Her face had turned red like the pepper she used to salt. And then, she walked away. Not a word. Not a smile. Just turned and walked out of the market, past the lapa sellers, down the same slope she had walked since she was 16. Obina didn't follow her. He just nodded, adjusted his kaftan, and walked toward the village square. People talked about it for days. Some said she was overwhelmed. Others said she was insulted. Edeora said, "Maybe she doesn't love him." But I wasn't so sure. The next week, Chidinma didn't show up at the market. That was the first time in over 3 years. Her store was empty. Her friend Edeora told us Mama Neka had fallen ill, and Chidinma was staying home to care for her. Obina came to the market twice that week but didn't linger. He bought oil and onions like a normal customer and left. Then, about 10 days later, news reached us that Motsi Okoro had died. It was early morning, and I was just setting up my basket of groundnuts when the bell ringer passed through the market, ringing that iron bell with the broken mouth. "Motsi Okoro has gone to be with his ancestors. Prepare for burial rites." People murmured and crossed themselves. No matter how you felt about him, death is not a thing to mock. That same day, Edeora came rushing to me, eyes wide. "Do you know what happened?" she whispered. "His will was read yesterday. He left that market store, not to his son, not to his wife, but to Chidinma." I nearly dropped my bowl. "What?" "Yes," she nodded. He said in the will that she was the only one who treated the market like it mattered. It was unbelievable. A market girl, the daughter of a poor widow, had just inherited one of the largest stores in Ikumus, but with the inheritance came enemies. Oh, plenty, the wives of the traders were furious. They claimed Chidinma had bewitched the old man. One said she used native chalk and hot waste beads. Rumors flew like bats after sunset. Even Motsi Okoro's nephew, a man who had never set foot in that store, came with local police to try and block her from entering, but when the village council heard the matter, and when the notary from Olu produced the signed will, there was nothing more to say. Chidinma became the legal owner of that store. The following Friday, she returned to the market.no makeup. No drama. Just Chidinma, in her usual faded wrapper and blue blouse. But when she walked in, something had changed. The same men who once ignored her greeted her like a chief's daughter. The same women who used to whisper now smiled too wide and too fake. She didn't speak to many people. Just cleaned the store and sat quietly, her eyes unreadable. Then, just before noon, Obinna arrived. He wasn't wearing anything fancy, just his normal mason clothes, hands still stained with cement. He walked to her store, took off his cap, and said simply, "I'm still here." Chidinma looked up, and for the first time, I saw her smile. Not the kind you give to customers or nosy market women. This one was soft, like rain after a long drought. She stood up and said, "Obinna, come and sit." And just like that, the second chapter of her life began. By the time the next rainy season came, the name Chidinma had already left the lips of market women and entered their dreams, half in admiration, half in envy. But let me tell you, she didn't become proud. No, she didn't change her voice, or her walk, or start using English anyhow like those ones who travel to Lagos for 2 weeks and return with fake accents. She still swept her store herself. Still helped her mother wash wrappers by the stream. And Obinna. He was always beside her. I remember the morning they came to the village council hall together. It was a Thursday, and the elders were drinking palm wine and arguing over who should repair the broken culvert on Abodo Road. Chidinma greeted each elder by name, knelt respectfully, and waited patiently. When it was her turn, she rose and said, "I have a proposal. There are many girls in Umu's who want to trade, but have no table, no shade, and no help. I want to use part of my store to start a small cooperative for girls like me, girls who hawked pepper, who sold garden eggs on trays, who are tired but not hopeless. I want to build something for them." There was silence. Then Ichi MBA, the eldest elder, cleared his throat and said, "You want to give away your inheritance?" Chidinma replied, "No. I want to multiply it." That day, the council granted her approval, and within 3 weeks, Chidinma's corner was born. It wasn't a building, no. It was a section of the market, just 5 small tables at first, shaded by patch tarpaulin, but it carried something powerful, hope. She chose 5 girls, 2 from her old hawking route, 1 orphan girl from Bays, and 2 teenage mothers the market women usually avoided. She didn't just give them stores. She gave them seed money, mentored them, and taught them how to balance accounts. And every week, they contributed to a savings pot, managed by Obinna. Yes, Obinna. He stopped laying blocks for others and started building the future with his hands and his heart. He helped erect new wooden tables, installed a large umbrella system, one that actually worked, and even sourced cheap tiles from Olu to pave the muddy area during the rains. People began calling it Aichi Chidinma Wuru, what Chidinma built. But good things rarely go unchallenged in this life. It was on August, the moon of conflict, when trouble came. The market union chairman, Motsi Alezi, a pot-bellied man who never traded a thing but always collected dues, accused Chidinma of causing disorder. He claimed her cooperative was dividing the traders, and that she was spoiling the hierarchy of seniority. He summoned her for a public hearing and tried to shame her in front of everyone. "Where were you when we built this market?" he barked. "How can a small girl with no husband and no land dictate how we run things?" Chidinma stood calmly. She looked around, her eyes resting on the faces of women who once ignored her, now eating better because of her vision. Then she said, "You asked where I was when you built this market. I was barefoot, hawking pepper under the sun. I was the girl your people called market rat. But I didn't let it kill my spirit. I worked. I prayed. And now I am building, not to destroy, but to include those you ignored." People clapped. Real claps. From the heart. Motsi Alesi tried to raise his voice again, but it was too late. He had already lost the people. By December, 2 more cooperatives had sprung up. One for widows. Another for returning women who came back from the city empty-handed. Chidinma trained them in market strategies and record keeping. Obina handled logistics and security. That same December, as the harmattan wind rolled in and turned the skies grey and dusty, we gathered under the old Iroko tree beside the community shrine for a wedding. Yes, Chidinma and Obina. No white wedding, no bridal train. Just traditional marriage the way our ancestors did it. Her bride price was 1 tuber of yam, 1 bottle of palm wine, and a heartfelt blessing from Mama Neka. Obina came with his kinsmen, wearing a simple George wrapper and red coral beads. His voice shook when he said, "I don't come with riches. I come with a future. Let us build together." And Chidinma smiled, not the smile of a girl impressed by words, but the smile of a woman who had suffered, survived, and chosen her own peace. Today, if you walk through Ikumus, you'll find more than tomatoes and onions. You'll find dreams, neatly packaged in raffia baskets, sewed with grace, mentored with love, and at the center of it all is the market girl who built a market. I watched it happen. I was there when she cried. I was there when they laughed at her. I was there when she rose, and if you ask me who Chidinma is, I will not tell you she was lucky. I will tell you she was brave.